All right, everybody, welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to be covering a player, an all-time great player, I must add, that played in the mid-2000s all the way into the 2010s, the mid-2010s. And that's a player by the name of Dwayne Wade. And I was led to do a video about him today because I don't want anybody to forget about how great of a player Dwayne Wade was. Sometimes it's easy to kind of, leave players out when we start talking about the all-time greats in NBA history. We forget to mention certain players and what they were able to accomplish. And Dwayne Wade, during the time period he played, he accomplished a lot. So that's who we're going to be covering today. So for those who are not familiar with Dwayne Wade and what type of player he was, you're going to learn a lot today. And for those who are already familiar, you're going to have a great appreciation for this video as well, because I'm going to give a detailed breakdown of his spectacular career. So tune in, let's get right into it. All right, so for those who don't know already, D. Wade grew up in Chicago, Illinois. He played for a high school called Harold L. Richards High School in Oak Lawn. So at first, when he was playing in high school, he excelled at playing football. It wasn't really about basketball too much until later on, or at least when he started to become real good at basketball. It didn't start till later on, but in his junior year, he grew 4 inches in height, and that helped him out a lot. In his junior year, he became the star player of the team, averaging 20.7 points per game and 7.6 rebounds. So he became the best player, and he took a big leap that year. And then in his senior year, he took an even bigger leap, averaging 27 points per game and 11 rebounds. So he took an even bigger leap that year, and he led his team to a 24-5 record. So after he started to stand out in high school, he drew some attention from different college programs, and he ended up getting recruited to Marquette University. So his first year there from Marquette, he didn't actually play due to academic reasons. He was not eligible to play in his first season, and he was able to get his grades together and work on, keeping his grades at the level that they needed him to keep it at. And by year 2, he was playing for the team. So his first year playing for Marquette was in the 01-02 season. And in that season, he averaged nearly 18 points per game. He led his team in scoring and led Conference USA, which was the conference he played in. He led them in steals. And he also averaged 6.5 rebounds and 3.5 assists his first year playing. And in the process of doing so, he led Marquette to a 26-7 record. And that was the best record that school had since the 93-94 season. So his impact was felt right away. And by year 2, he upped his scoring average to 21.5 points per game. And he led his team in scoring, of course, again that year. And they also pulled off a major upset that season against the Cincinnati Bearcats. They were able to defeat them to win the Conference USA Championship. And that game took place. That was the day that Dwayne Wade's mom was released from prison. And she was able to see Dwayne Wade play for the first time. And I'm sure that was a special moment, and they were able to pull off that upset and win the championship for their conference. So going forward after that, Wade was able to lead Marquette to the Final Four that season. And he had some great performances en route to getting his team that far. They were able to beat top-seeded Kentucky. He had a triple-double, 29 points, 11 rebounds, and 11 assists against that squad. And that was the 4th time in NCAA history that a player was able to record a triple-double. And they were able to advance to the Final Four, where they would end up losing to Kansas. But with D. Wade's performances in his 2 seasons with Marquette and in the NCAA tournament, he drew a lot of attention, and he raised his profile. Now, of course, he was not viewed like how LeBron James or Carmelo Anthony were viewed coming out of high school and college. But he definitely raised his profile, and he ended up being the 5th pick in the 2004 NBA draft by the Miami Heat. So LeBron was picked 1, Darko Milicic, who came from overseas, was number 2, then Melo, and then Chris Bosh. And then Wade was picked number 5 by the Miami Heat. And in his first year with Miami, he had a very good season, averaging 16 points, 4 rebounds, 4.5 assists. He did his thing as a rookie. He finished 3rd in the Rookie of the Year voting behind LeBron and Melo. And Wade led his team to the playoffs. The Miami Heat were able to get to the playoffs with a 42-40 record. They were the 4th seed in the Eastern Conference, and they actually advanced past the first round. They were able to beat the New Orleans Hornets, led by Baron Davis in round 1. They beat him in 7 games. And the most memorable moment in that series was when Dwayne Wade hit a game-winning floater in Game 1. So once they were able to advance past them, they ran into the Indiana Pacers, who had the best record in the Eastern Conference that year with 61 wins. And they were beat by them in 6 games. But Dwayne Wade had a great rookie performance in his first playoff go-round, so he averaged 18 points a game and 5.5 assists his first year in the playoffs. So Dwayne Wade came in and started off with a bang. He helped that team improve, and then in the next season, they were able to bring on Shaquille O'Neal. And with his presence on the team, that took the team to the next level. So in the 04-05 season, with Shaq on the team now, the Heat, they led the Eastern Conference in wins. They won 59 games that year. D. Wade led the team in scoring, averaging 24 points a game. Also led his team in assists, averaging nearly 7 assists per game. And he made his first All-Star team in just his second season. He was picked as a reserve. Also made the All-NBA second team that year as well. So he had a standout season, a breakout season. And in the playoffs, he upped his scoring average to 27 points and still averaged around 6.5 assists. So the Heat, they swept the first 2 rounds of the playoffs. They were able to sweep the New Jersey Nets. And then they swept the Washington Wizards in round 2. And then in round 3, in the conference finals, they ran into the Detroit Pistons. So let me say this, the Detroit Pistons, they won the championship the year before, so they were going for a repeat. And the series went 7 games. Wade did get injured. He got injured in Game 6. And they lost that game. And then in Game 7, his first game back, they ended up losing that game at home. So they went down in 7 games. And the Pistons went on to lose to the Spurs in 7 games that year. So the Heat came back the next season, still with Shaq on the team. They brought in Jason Williams at point guard, and they also brought in Antoine Walker at small forward. And let me not forget, they also brought on Gary Payton as a backup point guard as well. So they brought on some pieces to help try to put their team over the top. They had some injuries that season in the 05-06 season. I know Shaq missed over 20 games that year. So Wade was carrying a lot more of the load. Of course, Wade had another breakout season, and even more of a breakout season from the year before. He made the All-Star team again, made the All-NBA second team again. He was a starter in the All-Star game this year for the first time. He averaged 27 points per game that season and a little bit over 6.5 assists. And they finished as the 2nd seed in the East that year with 52 victories. They were second behind Detroit. Detroit won 64 games. So in the playoffs, they squared off against the Chicago Bulls in the first round. They beat them in 6 games. And then they beat the New Jersey Nets in the second round in 5 games. And so they were able to match up with Detroit again in the conference finals. And this time they were able to get the best of Detroit. They beat them in 6 games. So they were able to make it to the NBA Finals that year, where they squared off against the Dallas Mavericks. And that's where D. Wade made history. For those who don't already know about the 2006 NBA Finals, that is by far, without question, that is one of the top 10 greatest finals performances in NBA history by a player. And that's what Dwayne Wade did. Dwayne Wade in the 2006 Finals, with his team being down 2-0 against the Dallas Mavericks, this man averaged almost 35 points per game in that series, shot around 47%, almost 8 rebounds a game, 2.5 steals. He completely dominated that series. From games 3 to 6, he was amazing. I remember watching that series myself, how he was able to lead them in that comeback in game 3, and then going forward just dominated that series, man. One of the best finals performances in NBA history. That's where D. Wade really made a name for himself, and that will always be something that will stand out in regards to his legacy. The 06 Finals. So the Heat, they ended up becoming champions that year. He was the Finals MVP, and at that point, people were talking about Wade as potentially being the best player in the NBA in just his 3rd season. Believe it or not, that was a conversation at that time. Unfortunately for Wade, going into the next 2 seasons, in 06-07 and then in 07-08, he was still a great player, but of course around that time is when injuries started to kick in for D. Wade, and he missed good portions of those next 2 seasons. And just off top, I know one of those seasons he did dislocate his shoulder. That was in 07. He came back for the playoffs, but he wasn't really the same. 08, he missed I don't know, like almost half the season, man. He wasn't really the same player that season, but it was because of injuries. And then the 08-09 season was really like a comeback season for Wade. You know, people were starting to not talk about him as much as one of the top players in the league. But in 08-09, he came back strong. He led the Heat back to the playoffs that year. He led the league in scoring, averaging 30 points per game, averaged 7.5 assists, shot around 49%, averaged over 2 steals. And he also became the second shooting guard other than Michael Jordan to have over 100 blocks in the season. So the Heat that year finished with a 43-39 record. They were the 5th seed in the Eastern Conference. They made it to the playoffs and lost in 7 games to the Atlanta Hawks. Dwayne Wade finished 3rd in the MVP voting that year behind LeBron and Kobe. So the Heat were starting to slowly get back on track. And then the next year after that, they went 47-35 in the 2010 season. D. Wade's stats reduced a little bit, but he allowed his teammates to become a bit more involved that year. He averaged around 26 points per game that season and around 6.5 assists. So the Heat were able to make it to the playoffs again as the 5th seed, where they would lose to Boston in the first round in 5 games. All right, so after that, going into the 2010-2011 season, that's when Chris Bosh came onto the team, and then, of course, LeBron made his infamous live decision to come onto the Heat as well. So they formed a big 3. They had high expectations. And within the next 4 seasons, the Heat went to the finals 4 straight years. And they won 2 out of those 4 championships. So around this time, D. Wade, he, other than his first season where him and LeBron kind of went hand in hand, and it wasn't really 100% certain who was really going to be the leader or the best player on the team, it pretty much was Wade taking a backseat to LeBron. Pretty much from 2012 going forward, he took a backseat to LeBron, pretty much gave LeBron the keys to drive the car, and he became a secondary option on the Heat team. But of course, you know, he was still the heart and soul of the team, and they won 2 championships in 2012 and 2013. And then after 2014, LeBron left, and it went back to being Wade's team again. In 2015, Wade was doing well. He had a season where he was averaging around 21 points per game. Chris Bosh was still on the team. He had injuries where he missed a good portion of the season. And then Wade also had some injuries where he missed about 20 games that year. So the Heat failed to qualify to make the playoffs. And then the next season, this is now in 2016, they brought in some pieces. I think actually Goran Dragic came at the end of the 2015 season. But in 2016, they brought in Luol Deng. They also drafted Hassan Whiteside. They brought in Joe Johnson later on in the season. They had a pretty well-rounded team. The Heat won 48 games that year. They were 3rd in the Eastern Conference. They advanced to the second round where they were bouncing 7 games to the Toronto Raptors. All right, so after that season, going into 2017, Wade decided to team up with the Chicago Bulls with Jimmy Butler and Rajon Rondo, where he played for 1 season. And they made a run to the playoffs. They lost in the first round to Boston. Then going into 2018, Wade went to Cleveland to team up with LeBron again. He played there for half the season, and then he got traded back to the Heat, and that's where he finished his career. And that's where he should have finished his career, with the Miami Heat. He played all the way into the 2019 season, and that's how he capped off his career. So I just wanted to do a video on Wade today to cover what he was able to do season by season, what he was able to accomplish. And just to sum it all up, in the 16 seasons that Dwayne Wade did play, he made the All-Star team 13 times, made the All-NBA team 8 times, twice on the first team and 3 times each on the second and third team. Also made the All-Defensive team 3 times as well, the second team that is. But most importantly, he's a 3-time champion. And as I stated before, he has one of the greatest Finals MVP performances in NBA history. And he also was named to the 75th anniversary NBA team. So, with that being said, for those who didn't know too much about Wade already, that's cool. Hopefully you learned a lot in this video. And for those who did know about his career already, that's great as well. Hopefully you guys had a great appreciation for this video. So once again, I thank you guys for tuning into my channel. Everybody have a blessed day. All glory be to God.